also open my photos so that I'm ready to screen share in a moment. Awesome. So hello, everyone. My name is Keely. I am currently a farm manager at a farm in Tiverton, Rhode Island, called Movement Ground Farm. I'm also a member of the Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective, which is an intertribal collective of women and Two-Spirit folks in the Northeastern region doing food sovereignty work within our own communities. I'm a member of the Nipmuc Nation. Our tribal community currently and historically has been located across sort of central western Massachusetts, as well as the northern parts of Connecticut and Rhode Island. And so I do a lot of organizing work with my tribe as well around food sovereignty. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I'm also connected to a bunch of national youth orgs, youth food and environmental justice organizations through Rooted in Community. And I came to this work. Today I'm going to talk about specifically a handful of crops that I've been keeping and ways I've become connected to different seeds that have been grown by my ancestors historically, and then have sort of had to leave from our community, and how they've found their way back, and have gotten to, have the privilege of stewarding and caring for those seeds. So I'll have some pictures too to show you all of that. But I got my start. I know a lot of folks, I don't know who everyone is here. I wish we had time to go through so I could know who my audience is fully, but maybe I'll learn a little bit about that during questions and answers. So I got my start at the Food Project, which is an organization in Boston and Greater Boston that brings young people together around food justice and I see more people I know. Hi, Jake. Hi, Liz. That's awesome. And so I got my start through the Food Project. So I was urban farming right out of 8th grade as a 14-year-old, and also working on the 30-acre farm in Lincoln that the Food Project has, and also had a chance to be on the North Shore, so in Lynn and Beverly and Wenham. And that was my start to land and food work. I didn't get my start through my tribal community, although that was definitely supported, and the work that I was sort of like engaging in was definitely seen as traditional work and was like uplifted. But all of my mentors and teachers were, for the most part, it was a lot of white people who were in agriculture, who did things in a very, I don't know, I guess classic sort of sustainable agriculture, for production, CSA model format. And so it's been, now I'm on my 14th year. This is my 14th season farming. And that has slowly evolved to be much more sort of connected to the way that my ancestors have stewarded seeds and plants. So that's how I got my start. I lived in Eggleston and JP for the last 7+ years, and during the pandemic, when I accepted this new position, is when I moved. I currently live in Westport, Massachusetts, which, having grown up in Boston area, I had no idea where I am right now. I'm now on Wampanoag territory, like near Dartmouth, UMass Dartmouth, if those of you who are familiar with that school. It's really beautiful down here. And yeah, that's a little bit about my background and who I am and where I'm coming from and how I came into this. So in the last handful of years, I've had the opportunity to sort of take on stewarding, and I'll get into the photos like shortly. I think that'll be nice to look at things while we talk. Pretty informal also, so like I will talk for a while, but then I totally want to make space for discussion and questions. So a couple years ago, I think 3 or so years ago, I was working full-time on the Food Project's Lincoln farm as a farmer. And I was also involved in organizing an agroecology gathering with my tribal community in the Northeast. We were doing an intertribal, basically encuentros or encounters in the agroecology movement are similar to like a conference, but agroecology folks would definitely say that that's not what they are. They're meant to be an engaged opportunity for folks to connect and learn together on a certain space and piece of land, and it's meant to be much more interactive. and sort of like collectively run. And I'm not doing it justice right now, but that's okay. And during that encounter, I had this dream of this white corn. Um, and I've been taught as I grew up to really respect and listen to my dreams. And I I woke up that next morning and was like, oh my goodness, I have to find this corn and figure out what this seed is that has come to me that I've never seen before, never grown before. I need to connect with it and find out what it is. And funny enough that that day the field trip for the encounter was to Narragansett Farm in Rhode Island, and they were growing a white capped flint corn that looked exactly identical to what I had dreamed the night before. Um, and I wasn't on that field trip. I had friends. I was working, and my friends texted me pictures from the day, and I saw the corn, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's the corn that was in my dream last night." And I went on a on a mission with my partner to locate that seed, and found myself in the germaplasm database, National Germaplasm Database. Fun fact, the US government has stolen seeds for a very long time, also kept seeds sometimes in better relationship than historically has happened. And they just sort of keep them and wait for people to find them in this database. Many are culturally relevant seeds to tribal communities, as well as there's just so many intriguing international and national like seed treasures that they are just kind of hoarding in some seed bank somewhere. And they had around 15 different strains of that white corn um, that had been named for each of the like white man stewards who had kept those seeds for, they named them after themselves. Um, and I didn't know anything about seed keeping. I didn't, not nothing. I knew very little about seed keeping, and I knew very little about what I was getting myself into, but I knew that I needed to bring this corn to my community, and we needed to be tending it again. So long story short, I got my hands on 10 or 15 different varieties of that seed and mixed them all back together to hopefully create a land race again that would have the most diverse genetics possible. In seed keeping, I think a lot of I know there's actually a couple workshops coming up that talk more about seed keeping, so I'll save the opportunity for those folks to speak better to that later. But I knew that I wanted as much diversity in that corn as possible, because I knew that the 30, 40 years that each of those white farmers had kept that corn, it was going to be specifically kept to their exact climate or their exact sort of, I don't know, their soil type, all of those things. And I didn't know how that was going to go in the soil I was keeping, which is really sandy. And yeah, so I mixed it all up. And grew it out. And now I'll get into some pictures, because I know that's the exciting thing to look at. They're not in any particular good order, so we'll just talk through. How do I screen share here? Oh, there we go. They're not in any particular. Oh, how do I make this? Oh, okay. Well, we'll just look at it in this weird way. Sorry about that. Can you all see this? Okay. Yeah, awesome. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Good. So this is what the corn looks like. This is sort of, this is a second or third generation of corn seed and sorting, both for food and for seed keeping. But this is what that corn looked like that I had dreamed about. And let's see, I'm going to show you, I have so many cute pictures. Okay, this is the picture I think Michelle was talking about at the beginning, which is really beautiful. So this is sort of how it actually showed up to me on my dream. Was, these cobs look really, really nice. And yeah, so this is the corn after the first year's harvest. This seed picture here, this is what the germaplasm envelopes look like. They're very official looking and have all kinds of weird stuff on them. And I got like 15 different ones. I'm curious. This one's not named anything too funny, but a lot of them are like Thompson or like Johnson, or, named after some random person's last name. And yeah, so this is the beginning of that journey. And I also got, as I was going through that germaplasm list, there's a corn that's called King Philip's corn. And yeah, King Philip's corn is a red Flint corn. So it's also for like cornmeal. Uh, yeah, you could make cornmeal, corn flour, any like, dried corn products. That's such a bad word, products. Anywho, it is and has been grown by inland communities, both like my community as well as all the way up through Maine. Theirs is, I forget the name of, they have, it's like the same corn, but it's been kept by their communities for hundreds of years, and they have a different name for it, but they're like of the same family. And it's a red Flint corn that sometimes shows itself with yellow kernels too, and orange kernels, which is really beautiful. I'm not sure if I have pictures of that here. And so I grew that one out too on a separate site so that they wouldn't cross. And all this makes it sound like I have so much land available to me. Actually, it just comes from me having bargained with friends and talked to friends about what I was trying to do. And yeah, just like kind of just being like, hey, do you have like a small area on wherever your land is? I went as far as Athol, Massachusetts, which is pretty far out there. It's like an hour and a half. I was commuting out there like once a month during the season I was growing it. And I had a friend who would check on it weekly. But all this to say, corn definitely is one of those things when you're working in a small city space is not easy to grow enough for food, grow enough for food and seed. And relationship building is key in both wanting to keep culturally relevant crops that maybe take up more space or maybe require a warmer climate. Maybe you need to bargain some being able to put some pots into someone's greenhouse, which I'll get into when I talk about beans in a little bit. But yeah, all this to say, I have been negotiating for space with friends for a long time in order to make sure that uh, I can grow out like the amount of seed and food that I want to, in order to have enough for food to share with my community, as well as seed saving and for genetic diversity. We can talk about, we don't have to go into the deep specifics of like corn diversity now. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit. But yeah, so I started a lot of my seed in trays. Again, this is like, I'm a schemer. People who have worked with me, I know there's at least one person on this call that knows this. I am not afraid to ask for what I want or need. And so I told my supervisor that I was going to be starting, whatever 10 or 15 trays of seed in their greenhouse. And actually for my current job, at Movement Ground Farm, part of negotiating my position, I negotiated for space and negotiated for an acre of land for the collective, the Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective. And that was sort of a requirement for anywhere I was going to accept employment. And I highly recommend to folks putting that kind of thing on the table when you're seeking, if it's employment or community garden space, making upfront what your needs or wants are. When you ask, you'd be amazed. The opportunity, giving people the opportunity to say yes to you is pretty awesome. So, and I just saw Rob just hopped on too. Hi, Rob. So this will be a familiar picture for Rob. This is at the harvest gathering of the first year of that corn. So something that's really important to me, and I think probably many of you on this call who have grown or kept seed, that is really important to you, your family, or your community, whether that's, your family and community are far away, or you're reconnecting, or it's a new seed you're keeping, or it was gifted to you. It was really important that we connect and make sure that folks were involved in the process of growing that corn. And while in the first year, the tending was definitely more so on me. The first harvest, it was really important that we brought, as this was pre-COVID, obviously. It's so weird to see photos of folks without masks. But one of the things that happened after this event was, folks took seed home with them, which was really, really important, both so that folks could grow their own plots of this corn, but also so that we have like seed security. And that's really important, right? Is like we've embarked on this journey to like rediversify that seed stock and to make sure that um, that this crop will stay in our community forevermore. And so it's really important that folks had an opportunity to both connect and like build a relationship to this crop, but also to like have some stake in it. Like I'm taking the seed home with me. I need to make sure either I'm planting it or that it's brought back into sort of the seed stock that I'm tending every few years, so that we're mixing up the diversity and so that we have as many different plants that did, you know, differently. I've switched this, you know, obviously I'm on a new location. It's a slightly different climate. It's got different soil. And I want to keep as much of the genetic diversity in there as possible. So this year I have contacted some of the people who are at that first harvest, and I'm having them like, you know, we're trading. So I'm giving them cobs that I grew last year, and they're giving me some cobs from that first year, and we're making sure until we have it grown in enough places that we're keeping that seed as diverse as possible. Let me see here. So yeah, so there's some cute pictures. We had every event that I hold related to growing food and harvesting or processing food always is intergenerational. This is Cecilia. She lives actually in Mission Hill and is a huge community gardener. She's awesome. You may see her around if you live in Boston. This is Millie. Millie is in where she is, Taunton, and lived in Boston in Hyde Park for a really, really long time. And she tells the best stories about growing food. She grew up kind of where the IKEA in Stoughton is, if those of you who know where that is, and talks about getting the first running water to to the land that she grew up on there. And it's so important that when you're keeping seeds and when you're growing your culturally important in crops, that you're infusing that with the stories and with just the knowledge of the group that you're engaging with. I think folks, yeah, I think that's familiar to a lot of folks, but you know, just raising our food that is so important to us, whatever that may be, if that's, you know, potatoes or if it's okra or whatever it may be, it's really, really important to not do that in a silo. You have to keep sort of the vibrancy of the stories that those crops hold, and make sure that the foods that you're cooking with them are doing honor to that crop. Like it's so important that it's not just I'm growing this thing and it's separate from its stories and from its relevance within cuisine and within culture and the stories. So I think that's really important to remember. And related to that, this is super cute. We had one of the people who was there, Brittany, she has worked at Plymouth Plantation for a long time. She's Nipmuc, she's from my tribe. But she does a lot of youth education, and we didn't plan for it, but you know, she just like popped out a bucket of water and started teaching the little ones who were there, who got bored of helping haul corn out of the field, taught them how to make corn husk dolls, or some of them knew, and just gave that as an opportunity. This is my little niece, Emery. She says right now, she just turned 5. She wants to be a farmer when she grows up, which is awesome. That or a wrestler. She hasn't decided. I actually got that text literally right before this talk. I thought that was pretty cute. So she's torn. She's not sure if she wants to be a wrestler or a farmer. I told her she could totally be both if she so desires. And I think a big part of that aspiration of her 5-year-old self is having been involved in so much of the food growing in our community, which happens all over. I'm like not the only person growing. We definitely have both home gardeners in city space, as well as folks with bigger backyards or access to land. We also keep a small garden on our reservation in Grafton, and we try to grow mostly medicinals there. That's really important. I'm sorry, most of the pictures I have are corn related, but I'm going to talk about 3 other crops too that I will just have to imagine. Cecilia loves to post for her photos. Super cute. So the whole goal of bringing back with this corn in particular, this is my most proud picture, was because we want to have access to this food source again. So folks have eaten corn here forever. Well, not forever, but we won't get into the history of corn right now. But corn has been grown by our people for a long time. And folks used to take cornmeal with them on hunts in a pouch, and they'd mix it with water and either cook it over the fire or eat it just like that and have it expand in their stomach as a food for journeys. It's something that I grew up knowing was really important, and taking for granted the fact that I could just go to a grocery store and purchase it, and didn't think about how meaningful or relevant it would be if this could be grown either by myself or just by a community member. And I think that hearing from, like, when I've dropped off cornmeal to elders, and they call me a week later telling me what they made with it, like that's why I do this. This is what's so important. It's not just about keeping a good seed. It's about producing enough food to be able to feed our folks. So this picture is from cob all the way down to a Johnny cake. Johnny cake it's traditionally just water and corn, and then cooked in some form of lard over a fire. Sometimes we put baking powder in it now to get them a little puffier. But it's a food that we've eaten forever, usually with maple syrup, which is also a traditional food. And so this was really exciting to me. I got a grant this year to purchase a mill so that I can process it myself as well to different thickness, coarsenesses, so that I can grind it to what people want or need to cook in their own kitchens. Folks who tend food here know, getting people to eat quote unquote healthy food, or getting people to eat things right out of the garden, or that you have to give them something that is familiar, that they already know how to, and or are willing to eat. And so being able to like replace something that folks would previously have gotten at a grocery store is just so amazing, whether that be grits because they're eating grits regularly, or whether that be more of a corn flour. We're working to do a big hominy processing day too. So to nixtamalize the corn, so that we can have hominy for soups, and that we can potentially, our community didn't really make tortillas, but for some people that's really important, right? They are using corn tortillas because they've gotten used to that, and why not do that with our ancestral corn? So that's pretty exciting. Couple more cute pictures. I have lots of friends with cute babies who love to come and talk and sing to the corn, which is awesome. This is Tristan. So I think, thinking about that is really important to like how we're plugging, like we don't always have to just have young ones or elders like plugging in to do physical work. It's also really just important to have them around for, like I was saying, storytelling or being silly. Cool. So that's my thoughts and feelings on corn. I'm going to talk about beans for a few. So I think a lot of folks are familiar with Three Sisters. So corn, beans, and squash being grown together. It's like a way that plants have been grown by many tribal communities for a long time. They create a really they're one example of many examples of crops growing really beautifully together in relationship with one another. And so corn was sort of my first, sort of like it was, I guess, the first of the Three Sisters that I got to tend and like sort of really dive into like locating and figuring out what seed I was trying to grow, because I want to again be growing as many of my ancestors' seeds as possible. This is just a black bean from Fedco. This is not a bean related to my community. But I wanted to grow a good amount of dry beans on that 1 acre plot that I negotiated for at my job this past year. And so cranberry beans, which have been grown primarily, I think, by Abenaki, Wabanaki folk who are north of us. Beans are funny. I'm still learning a lot about different varieties of beans, as well as like a lot of times you'll you'll see beans that look really similar and you're like, are those the same? You know, like I'm so confused. I've heard strawberry bean or I've heard cranberry bean, and they'll look really, really similar. And a lot of times that's sort of similar to what I was saying about that corn, and like communities will have their red bean, for example, and they've stewarded it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And you know, another community down the road will have also had a red bean. Maybe at some point they were the same bean, and they've slowly adapted and become they've become their own, you know, different bean now, even though they've served the same purpose culinarily or sort of culturally, story wise. They'll fulfill this sort of same space in a community. So I'm on a hunt for a bean grown by my ancestors, and actually this winter have had the opportunity to connect with a bunch of seed keepers, and I think I might have my hands on one for, I don't think it'll be this season, but for next season I might be able to grow out a bean that's traced to central Massachusetts since forever, and I'm working on getting my hands on that. But that being said, for now I'm going to borrow and grow seeds. I'm growing a Jacob's cattle bean this season, a cranberry bean still. We've been seed sorting endlessly in my house on the floor, saving the best cranberry beans we grew. Oops, I just did a weird thing. What did I do? This is okay. This is down on the plot the acre at Movement Ground Farm. That's the corn growing out this past season, and a couple folks who came down to help with processing of the beans. We grew like a quarter acre of dry beans. I think it was like 150-pound harvest, which is a lot. It's a lot of beans. I'm also going to talk in a little bit after I get through 2 more crops about growing on a porch, because I did a lot of culturally relevant crops on my porch in JP in Eggleston for a long time. So yeah, so this is the plot. This is, you know, beans that we grew this past season. Because I put out into the universe what I'm looking for, and I'm blessed to be well connected to so many amazing growers and folks with resources. I was connected to a person named Bill Braun, kind of close to where I live, who has, he's a seed keeper, and he has what's called a winnow wizard and a bike pedal powered thresher. And so these are 2 tools that made processing beans a lot faster. And I think, again, like putting out into the universe and asking all the people you know, I was like looking at, I curse a lot. I'm really trying not to curse on this. We had an F ton of beans to process, like so many. It was outrageous. And, there's 4 of us here on this day. And you can't gather 20 people like you would have, or like we did for the corn harvest in the past. We couldn't get together the folks that we wanted to because of COVID, and just, people's schedules are busy, and it's hard to make that happen. So putting out to the universe that we needed help figuring out how the hell we were going to get through hundreds of pounds of beans. This person showed up out of the blue and had tools that were then offered to us as we needed in order to process these beans. And I don't think that we would have been able to, I think they would have molded and been no good, if many more of them would have, if we had not had access to and been able to share that equipment. It's so important to find ways in community to either together own or get a piece of equipment you need, or find someone who's willing to share it. Yeah, so this is a little bit of what that plot looked like. We definitely, plant lots of flowers around, which helps with our pest issues. And you can't really see in this picture, but the next crop I'm going to talk about is tobacco, which will connect to my porch, because that's where I started keeping that seed. So in this plot, there's also tobacco. I've grown a medicinal tobacco. Tobacco is used in my community for prayer and ceremonially, there we go. and has been forever. And again, it's one of those things I grew up taking, taking for granted. I don't know where my parents got the tobacco that sat in a bowl at our house. I have no idea. Somebody grew it, and I was gifted seeds 4 or 5 years ago, for, it's a smaller plant. It's not like the tobacco you might see, growing in the South for the commercial tobacco industry. I didn't know much about growing tobacco. I knew it grew, tons of it was grown out in sort of Western Mass, and it has been grown by my community for a long time. But I didn't, I was like, it's a heat loving crop. What the heck am I going to do with this? I don't have space for this. I don't, it needs to dry down really, thoughtfully, because, some people do smoke it ceremonially. I can't say that word today. Ceremonially. But there's all these things you have to think about, when you're growing a crop, about how you're going to get it from seed to end. But also just that whole middle section, like, does it need to be, full sun? Does it need, to dry down partially while it's still in the ground, or do you cut it while it's still fresh and dry it? All of those things. So I wish I do not have good pictures of my porch garden, but let me tell you, I had in JP a 5 by maybe 10 or 12 space, right off of my kitchen, that I lived in that apartment for 7 years. And that's a small space. Those of you who have grown in a raised bed know that that's, 4 by 8, for example, at the Food Project, is what's been installed, in houses for a long time. You can grow a lot of food in that amount of space. Of course, I didn't put a raised bed on my porch. I don't think my porch is a little rickety. I don't think it could have handled that. But I could grow in pots. I could grow in window boxes, basically any container, 5-gallon buckets, any container I could get my hands on. Over the course of the 7 years I lived there, I acquired many. And I would grow all kinds of things, lots of herbs. Again, like I said, growing our own herbs has always been really important. And for convenience to my kitchen was definitely great. And then as I was thinking about, so tobacco shares some pests with like tomatoes. It wasn't something that I felt like I could bring to work, because I didn't know enough about, making sure that both the tobacco is going to be fine, as well as making sure that all the crops that shared diseases and pests at the farm were going to be okay. And I didn't want to mess with that, mixing yet, while I was still getting to know that plant. And so I started growing it on my porch. I grew probably like 10 plants or something like that, around that. Um, I had about 10 plants growing on my porch, all intermixed with, I was seed saving a handful of different beans for friends that had gifted them to me. Um, I was growing tomatoes. I was growing like 10 or 15 different types of herbs and flowers. And again, this porch, I really wish I could have found a photo for you all. I have a, whatever that's called, a highlight on my Instagram, that has tons and tons of videos and pictures. I just do not know how to get things off of that highlight onto this presentation, so I'm sorry for that. But I guess if you follow, that's like a weird plug. I don't need 1 million followers on Instagram, but if you follow me on Instagram, you can totally watch that highlight, and it's pretty cool to see how, I still can't believe how dense I grew things. I grew things in all spaces. I grew things up, I grew things out, sideways, just like every which way. I would put new pots. I would put things on tables and then grow plants that were a little more tolerant of shade underneath those tables, in containers. And so I was able to grow out, beans and tobacco, squash, not so much, cucumbers. Yes. I mixed and matched and figured out a way to put as much, biodiversity on that porch as possible, as well as not, obviously I can grow corn on my porch. But again, like, you're not, it's not impossible to grow the things that are important to you. Sometimes you have to choose. Sometimes we have to make some, strategic choices about what is possible in a given space. But I thought that tobacco definitely needed to be out in a field or have full sun, and was totally able to grow and produce and save seeds, for years on just my porch in containers. So it's totally totally feasible, totally possible. I'll kind of transition to squash now. This is a kind of a cool, exciting story. Again, I don't have tons of good pictures of the squash yet, but this is me taking cute photos on on my new porch at my new place that I live this past year. The squash in this photo, which I think, oh no, that's sorry. This is just a really cool picture of one of the cool genetic things that happens in this white Flint corn. There's like this spiralized design that comes up in probably like less than 5% of the cobs, but almost always shows up. Everyone I know who has kept this, like a Flint corn or this corn, usually finds cobs that look like this, which is really cool. Here we go, just the squash. So this looks like probably just a regular squash plant to folks, even maybe like close to a Magda squash plant. So this squash, again, once you start getting connected and start telling people things you're looking for or what's happening in your world, what you want to find or get access to, funny things start happening. I had offered to keep, so that seed keeper down the road, his name's Bill Braun. Freed Seed is the organization that he does seed saving with. So Freed Seed has been doing a rematriation project of seeds for a few years now. And he has a very limited amount of space. He asked if I was willing to grow out 2 varieties of beans, because beans, you can, again, I'm like, I don't want to go deep into seed keeping stuff, but beans can be kept, like it's 200 yards or something like that. You can have 2 different varieties and you don't have to worry about cross pollination. I'm sitting at the farm I work at now, 7 acres. So it's very easy for me to isolate beans. So I was like, sure, I'll grow out these beans, whatever. I didn't think of it. I was like, this is awesome. Another tribal community is going to get gifted more of their beans because of this. This is great. I'll, whatever. And he was like, oh, are there any crops you're looking for? And I was like, well, I'm looking for beans for my community. I'm hoping to get my hands on a squash at some point. And he just like froze. He was like, oh, a Nipmuc squash. I think I've heard of someone who has this. And I was like, oh my God, this is weird. I didn't think anything of it. People tell me these kinds of things. They're like, oh, I've heard this or that, and never follow through. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I was mailed an envelope. I don't know if I had a picture. Shoot, I don't think I do. Okay, it looked like this envelope here. This Wildwoods Farm is a Cherokee. This is one of the beans that I kept for him. It's a Choctaw bean, but it gives you an idea of what the envelope I received looked like. There's this farm, this seed keeper I think he's in Kentucky, who has a wildly large seed collection, and he's been slowly trying to distribute the seeds to different seed keepers to grow them out so that they can be rematriated, long story short. So that's how I ended up with a couple seeds I was growing out for 2 different tribal communities, the Saponi folk in North Carolina, as well as Choctaw in Mississippi. Those were the 2 beans I was growing out. And this same farm had a squash that was grown on my reservation in the 1800s, probably continually from prior contact, but that was when they had been saved from, and the story that was on the envelope that I received. And he knew the person who had ended up with those seeds to grow them out, called that person up, gave them my address, and mailed the seeds out. Pretty bonkers. And that was just this past season. So back to that picture of the squash, this is one of the plants I grew out. I think I got 8 seeds, was how many were in the envelope. It's pretty terrifying. Growers know, if I don't know who else has these seeds. If anyone else has those seeds, it's pretty terrifying. A lot of pressure. Isolating squash and cucurbits in general is kind of hard. There was definitely some waking up before dawn, before flowers had opened, to try and get out there and pollinate and then recover, just nutty. I was so terrified. I don't think I slept for the month that they were flowering. I now have a couple thousand seeds, because I was able to get I think it was 4 or 5 squash off of them. And I grew them again in a pot on my porch because I was so terrified. I had 2 at the farm, and then I grew 4 at my house on my porch because I was too terrified of missing the window or screwing up the pollination. And I'm excited because that means I have enough to share, right? I can send those out, and I will hopefully have a few people who are diligent and careful and cautious about seed saving, but also for folks who aren't, and who, aren't concerned or worrying about that too much, it's going to be okay. I have enough seed now, that I don't have to stress that too hard yet. So that's really exciting. So that's another crop that's now in the mix, that I'm able to share, um, both the seed and, yeah, just the experience of growing. It's really cool. The last crop, more cute pictures. Again, I don't have pictures. I'm sorry, I don't have pictures of like tobacco and all of that. This is a friend's little one who was eating the corn when it's green corn. So even grain corns, they're sweet, pretty sweet, before they harden out and sort of get their starches and are all, yeah, like ready to process and be cornmeal and flour. So she had mixed feelings about how green corn tastes, but it was really fun again to share with little ones, the experience of growing the corn out. So, oh yeah, here's more cute pictures. I don't know why they keep rotating. I'm so bad at this. Yeah, so this is again just cute pictures of the field where we're growing. You can see there's beans in between growing, and yeah, I've been mixing up what I'm seed keeping. Not pictured here, but a little ways up is sunchokes. Does anyone know what sunchokes? Jerusalem artichokes, heard of those? Yeah, I see some folks nodding or smiling in recognition. So Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes are another crop that have, oh, here, I think this is, yeah, this was the squash when they were germinating. I guess I did have more than 8 plants. That was so exciting. Seeing all of them emerge, I was like, I don't even know how old these seeds are. I was told to have very low expectations. And then they, of course, surpassed my expectations. So up the way from that image before, up the hill, were Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes, something I've eaten my whole life. And again, like I knew how they grew. I knew they looked like sunflowers. They had grown on, well, just on the sides of roads, but also like in backyards or wooded, like sort of edges of wooded areas that I'd visited as a kid. So I was familiar with digging them up and eating them, cooking them, as well as seeing like where they grew, but I hadn't really tended or kept them too much myself. I'm just obsessed with eating them and finding good spots for harvesting them. So sunchokes, for those of you who are not familiar, are a tuberous root crop that is in the sunflower family. They've grown here forever and ever and ever. And are absolutely delicious. Some people complain that they give them gas, which I think is funny. I don't have that experience too much, but whatever. It's something to be aware of if you do decide to branch out and eat them. They're an extraordinarily yummy and important food. They can be cooked like a potato. They can be like boiled, or they can be put in stews. They can be cooked on a pan. If they're like, cut to smaller pieces, they can be roasted. They have like a nutty, creamy flavor. And oh, they're so good. I have some in my fridge, and I have some that haven't sprouted yet that I need to go eat. They're so tasty. So they're a crop that have been eaten by, I think they actually are a native food for folks all the way down the coast, Eastern tribes throughout the Northeast, and then down Southeast. I think they might even go almost as far as Florida. And they're beautiful. They look like sunflowers, smaller blooms. When they're fully grown, they're about 4 or 5 feet. They're so great. They are perennial, and they, I don't know the word in my language for them, but a lot of tribal communities, Rowan White, I think on a podcast, talked about it once. She was saying that the translation for a lot of communities always is something along the lines of like, right under the surface, there's a lot of potatoes, or what is the other one she says? There's a couple funny names where it's just like so many potatoes right there, or all the translations, it's just like these funny funny, obviously when you try and translate things, it's not perfect, but all these communities, sort of the naming of the crop is just kind of speaking to the abundance that they produce, and how quickly they can do it, and how they're really just right. The food is right there. Like, you don't have to go digging super deep and laboriously the way you do with sweet potatoes or potatoes. They're really just right there, below the surface. They're harvested typically, you can harvest them either after the first frost in late fall, or early spring, before that they have sprouted again. And but like, the soil is just, at least partially thawed out, so that you can work the ground a little bit. So, and there's something you can store really easily through the winter. You could keep them dirty in a paper bag on your porch and eat them throughout the season. It's okay if they go through freeze thaw cycles. They're an amazing, resilient food that have fed people for a long time. And they grow everywhere. So they're the kind of thing that if you have a small urban garden space and you have a weird little edge and you want to put something pretty there, that you also want to be able to eat, assuming that the soil is okay, because they're a root, they're going to be really up in that soil. You could plant them along a fence line, and they're gonna grow just fine. They're going to produce an obscene amount, and all you need to do in order to make sure that they keep growing back every year is leaving some of those tubers when you harvest, right? Which is pretty awesome. So that is something that I'm obsessed with putting everywhere. I have at the bottom of my porch stairs, there's, I think it's actually, we're relatively close to the septic. I have to double check with my landlord. But there's like kind of not great quality soil that, is not gonna, I don't know, it's not gonna be like a spot really for a garden, but I'm like, I can totally just dig up a 2 by 4 foot area. If I just dig it up, fairly shallow, I can throw a bunch of those little roots in there, and by fall I will have a feast, which is pretty cool. So let's see, I've talked about corn, I talked about beans briefly, squash, tobacco, and sunchokes. And that is, I think, all of the crops that I really wanted to talk about, primarily. Yeah, I think that's all of them. So that's all of the crops I want to talk about. I do just want to make sure we have lots of space and time for questions, or I want to hear from some of y'all. I see so many more familiar faces and new people. And so I'm curious to hear what you all want to talk about, or what you're curious about. I'm by no means an expert. Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly learning so many new things, but I am an enthusiastic person who has grown in a lot of different weird sized and types of spaces with all kinds of different concerns, whether that be related to like sun access and soil type, et cetera. So I'm happy to talk through any of those things. And I guess my hope from this talk is to inspire each of you to think about building relationship with choose just one crop. I know that Owen from True Love always is kind of preaching this, and if you don't know True Love Seeds, you should totally look into True Love Seeds. And there's a cute podcast that they keep too, if you're a person who likes to listen to things. Owen has an amazing, what is it called? Someone knows this. I can't think of the name of it.
Seeds in Their People.
Seeds in Their People. I was like, seed stories.
So
Seeds in Their People. It's really, really freaking cute. And it's just, I would say that, yeah, the lesson is always to how can we deepen our relationship with the plants that our ancestors have grown. And I think that you'll find that the fruit is that much sweeter, whatever that fruit may be, if that's tobacco, a medicinal plant, if it's, I know a lot of folks who have grown cotton to reclaim that relationship, and just having those fruits of your labor and of your ancestors, and building that relationship back up, and sometimes healing that relationship can be so meaningful. So I hope that each of you will think about that, no matter the space you're growing in. You can always build that relationship. So that's all I've got to say. I'll let Michelle sort of do the finagling. I have to figure out how to get out of my screen share.
That was so wonderful, Keely. I love all your pictures. They're really beautiful and they're really evocative. And I love how the people are just as important as the crops. That really came through in this lovely way. Um, so we don't have that many questions. We have a lot of appreciation in the chat. We had one question which I answered. Oh, somebody said.
Oh, wow. There is so much in the chat. Ah,
No, it's okay. I've been watching it. You're good. You're good. You know, I've been putting in links to some of the things that you mentioned.
oh, fish heads and corns and beans. Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
and I guess that's something. Well, actually, yeah. If you want to say anything about that, sort of how you said you had sandy soil, like how you are you also trying to not just by what you grow, but how you grow. Are there things that from your ancestors that you're mimicking? I would love, or not mimicking, but
Yeah.
learning from.
Yeah. No, that's such a good one. Okay, sweet. Yeah, fish. So actually, when I was a little kid, for yeah, my parents were divorced, but my dad and my stepmom, we kept a Three Sisters garden when I was a little kid in Cambridge in like a small backyard spot, and I have like this little drawing I did when I was a little kid, where it's a little stick figure of myself and my sister, and we're holding our noses like this because we had buried fish heads in the mounds. Like true story, 100% was like a small child. We had gotten, I don't know, some fish market. We had asked if they'd give us fish heads and they gave them to us for free. And we, yeah, 100% buried fish heads, both for supporting, yeah, as that breaks down, it's feeding all of those crops as their roots are reaching down. And because of the work of the Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective being broadly like sort of food sovereignty and food systems and food justice work, there's fisher people within that network. And I was able to get my hands on a handful of fish guts, fish heads early this spring. And we were able to, not in the whole field, we were growing a little too large scale for the amount we just didn't. Yeah, again, in the future I think we could get to that point. I would love to be like fermenting my own like sort of fish emulsion. Those of you who have ever used like Neptune's Harvest, that's a goal definitely, is since we do have fisher people to utilize the extras that they're kind of just like offering to the land already. But if we could just get them to put it in a barrel and we could store it, and then if we can work out the logistics there, I think it's definitely on the table. um yeah, someone says I'm afraid of the rats. That's totally a legitimate fear. um, yeah, I would say, if you bury them real deep, I've also wrapped them in a paper bag with no ink on them, like a plain paper bag, and then buried them, and that can help suppress the initial like stinky phase. The microbes will get in there. Everything starts like breaking down, whatever, and it doesn't stink too bad. So that can be one sneaky method a little. um, but yeah, so I was on sandy soil. Now I'm in this like dreamy silt loam that like needs almost nothing. But I also totally am still helping other Rob shaking his head. Rob works where I used to work. Yeah, so I feel blessed now because the soil I'm in doesn't need a whole lot. I think that it is always, corn loves nitrogen and will eat it up. So anything you can do, fish heads are a great option. But I don't, I won't knock any of the, other inputs folks like have access to that might be easier as well. I've totally used and do use sort of chicken based fertilizers like blood meal or feather and bone meal. So, I think that you have to work with what you've got. And when you can, it's really fun to figure out the longer term ways to utilize the ways that either your ancestors or traditionally or folks from your region too. I think respectfully and knowledgeably utilizing or growing things in the way of the people in the area you're growing is important too. I think it's honoring the relationship with that land. And I think there's ways to do it in a good way, and there's ways to totally appropriate and sort of screw over native people. So I think it's definitely something to be thoughtful about. But I think that if there's a way that native folks of an area have been tending land, we shouldn't just ignore that and assume that we have or know a better way. Yeah, I don't know. That's over talking about that.
No, I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are interested, and it's relevant to one of the questions in the chat, which was someone was asking, how can people outside of Mass get involved? Like, do you need growing space for growing things out? But I wanted to know something that I've been thinking about, just in general, and also in relation to Michael Twitty's talk, like what you think about. There is this kind of way that like the slow food and the heirloom seeds movement in this country has really divorced crops from their stories in this really disrespectful way. And I think we are all really interested in growing crops that aren't just the ones of our culture. But do you have anything to say about like how that can be done more respectfully and
yeah, I'm definitely, I was going to say, I think this is one that like, don't take my answer as the only answer, because that can be really a problem. Keely said it was this way and that's right. So I cautiously answer this question. And I will say that one of the things I grow like tons of crops that are not of my culture. And actually the farm that I work on grows a lot of Asian crops, because the founder, he's Japanese and has for a long time stewarded relationship with Khmer and Korean and Vietnamese and Japanese and Chinese community in Providence and Boston, and wants to grow crops that culinarily are important and culturally are important to those communities. And so I now am, as the farm manager, am stewarding and taking care of those crops. And I think that one of the things I'm always thinking about is, how do I make sure that I'm doing like honor to these crops, whether that be making sure that as much as possible, like am I able to source open pollinated seeds, so that if I'm giving somebody a ripe version of this crop, or if I'm saving it to seed maturity, that I'm able to then share those seeds, or that a person, if they were to take that crop home, can save the seeds themselves from that crop, and not, it's such a, I didn't realize how, I didn't realize I was not the only one that like didn't fully understand just sort of how much seed companies have twisted sort of the seed market. And like, I think there's so many people who are, if they get a crop and it has seeds, they assume that they're viable. And so how is it that how can we like bridge that, right? So that like, I am giving you a crop and it definitely is a viable seed, and we don't necessarily have to like communicate about that constantly. It's not like, oh, well, this one's, sorry, like don't save those, like that's so frustrating it just sucks, right? Like if I give you an okra pod that is fully mature and I'm like, oh, like, whatever, like I grew this okra and it was ripe really early, and like it'll totally be a shorter season, whatever. And like, yeah, it's such a complicated, frustrating thing. I want to make sure that like I'm being responsible and thoughtful. Like if I'm giving you this food, like who am I giving it to? Am I just selling this at farmers markets to like wealthy upper middle class people who are coming and paying $5 for it? Or am I like making sure that okay, maybe I have to do some of that for if it's a business or whatever. But like, am I also making sure that people who like can't get okra at their grocery store are getting okra, and that's something that they want to be cooking with, and maybe eventually it means I'm not selling it at a farmer's market anymore, and I'm only growing it for a person to distribute to their community, to folks who can't get okra anywhere else, or like don't have the space to grow as much as they want to. That's just one example, but yeah, I guess I think about the seed sovereignty piece of it a lot, and like, am I somehow being a gatekeeper to this food, and then am I being a gatekeeper to this seed or this crop or the access to growing this food, whether that be because I have space and land, or whether that be because it's like I'm thinking about all those layers. I know that's like not a very succinct or clear answer, but I think just like thinking about like, why are you growing that food, and who gets to eat it, and who gets to keep the seed, and why. Always asking yourself that as much as possible. There's not a perfect science to it, but I think that I'm not saying don't grow those foods. I think it's really important actually for us to all grow and learn and understand, like there's crops I grew this past year that was my first time growing. And I got to either try new dishes that were like, I forget what was I tried a couple soups that were like the national soups of, my boss made, like Vietnam, Cambodia, and showcased certain things we were growing. And I had no idea. I was just like, oh, this is just this type of mustard, or, oh, I didn't think anything of it. And he was like, oh no, this is like, the national, it's like the most important ingredient in the national soup of this place. And I was like, I didn't even know places had national soups, but like engaging myself in that learning process. Yeah. And remembering and knowing that, we're all in this learning journey, and we need to remain open to all the things we don't know, and open to being told we're wrong, or that we shouldn't be. If someone tells you shouldn't be keeping a crop, thinking about that, and maybe, obviously, again, not taking just one person's word for it, but making sure that we're engaging in conversation with the community whose food that is.
Okay, we won't take that as the gospel truth. We'll take it as your perspective, but that was really beautifully put. Thank you. It's not a question, but Marcos, I don't know if you want to share what you said about corn, or if I should read it. I thought it was a nice comment. I want to make sure that everybody hears it.
Well, sure. This is Marcos, and I just appreciated again seeing some of the pictures that you shared about folks removing the kernels from the corn. I mean, when we were children, we were able to go down south to Mexico and visit the grandparents, and we always ran into this huge pile of dry corn cobs, and so for us it was fun, right? Coming from from the US, for them it was part of the livelihood. My grandfather, that's what he grew, and so it's just it really was, I mean, it's just a special sort of memory that's important to me. And also just again this morning I was just thinking about, like, corn and nistamal. I because I miss, actually, I don't really buy tortillas over here. It's a different taste, and and that's one of the things that I would bring back, masa, to either make tamales or make tortillas. Freeze it and it'd still be good. But I missed that. But that was on my mind this morning, saying like, I need to figure it out. I need to figure out how to, like, like grow some corn and then grind it, so that I could, have that taste, right? And so, again, it's just like for some reason, I felt like I needed to be in this space today. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I so appreciate it. Yeah, you might get a little more of that taste. I'm like, I want to like give you some corn so you can do a taste sample, see if it tastes good to you. Like, or more, I don't know, close, because it does. When I eat things, like when someone actually just gave me cornbread the other day, and I like couldn't eat the whole piece because it just didn't taste right. I was like, this doesn't taste like corn. I feel so bad saying that. I'm like, I hope this person isn't on here. But but I was just like, oh man, like once you're used to or have a certain taste in your mouth. Yeah. And you reminded me too, when you said that about when you were a little kid, one of the other things that, especially if you're seed saving, I've been thinking about, I was sorting sunflower seeds, a Hopi dye sunflower seed the other day, and a bunch of them, like a weevil had gotten into the seeds, right? So they're not going to probably be viable for planting. But I've just been thinking a lot about too, as you're sorting seeds, or as you're if you're like, that a seed isn't going to be good for growing, what you do with those seeds. Like a lot of folks will give them away and let someone else try them, but thinking about too, just like offering those to whatever creatures would or could eat them, right? Like some seeds we have chickens at the farm, and so I'll toss a lot of like old cucurbit seeds, or seeds, cucurbit seeds that aren't good. I know that they'll enjoy those, but I'll often leave spent or not good or molded out corn seeds for all of the little like four-legged creatures that like to come visit, and the birds like to come visit the field. I'll offer it around the edges of where we'll grow the corn, be like, you can have this corn, you know, and hope hope they won't go too much for the good one. But you know, just thinking about that too, yeah, like how do we make sure that we're being thoughtful about like the waste or what would be just tossed into a compost pile, being even more thoughtful and intentional about that too.
That's a great comment. You know, in our community garden this past year, we had, you know, more flowers growing, and sort of it was just very aesthetically pleasing. But then we realized that all of a sudden we had a community of finches, right? Like, and even in my own sort of little space at home, I would go out and I would just like, did I just see a bunch of birds leave? Right. But then I realized they were all hanging out on the like the utility wires for me to go back in, and then they come back down. And you just sometimes you miss that. And so, you know, and for me, like pumpkin seeds, you know, they may be full or not, but you know, I'll still dry them and grind them up when I make mole, right? So it's like it's still good.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
That's great. I really appreciate you sharing that, Marcos. I put, just so everybody knows, uh, this should happen at all your workshops. So if you're going to other ones, you don't need to worry about it, but there's like a little survey, a sign up for our newsletter, and something else that I can't remember, but I put them all in the chat. So if you are interested in, say, you know, commenting, you don't have to comment just on this workshop. It would be about the event overall, and then you can, you know, say whatever you like. But if you're not planning on coming to any others, please grab that. And then if you aren't already on our mailing list to hear about our programs and updates in the gardens, you can sign up. Just want to make sure I got that in there before 2:10. So does anyone have any final thoughts, questions, comments? We have a couple minutes before our time is up.
Does anyone know if the public library has any seeds? They were doing a seed saver program, I think in maybe Rossi or no, Hyde Park, maybe.
Yeah, no, the Mattapan, East Boston, and Grove Hall branches were doing that at last I knew. I don't know if any others added. And I don't actually, it's a good question, Kat. Does anyone know? It's still happening, Audrina?
The Cottonwood Square branch has a small sort of seed saving program, but also this, I think it's probably, you know, just a matter of like days or a couple weeks. We're gonna also be offering seeds for people that want to garden. You know, there's a few libraries that are putting together packets for people to be able to, you know, have
Sweet.
access to seeds. So probably just checking the websites, the respective websites, and you'll get some.
That's great. Thank you. Especially this year when it was hard to order seeds if you didn't do it in January. Somebody's Crystal's putting in the link. There's also a resource in Cambridge, so check that out if that's close to you.
The library in JP, so the Jamaica Plain branch has seeds. At least we donated some from Allendale last year. So you can check there. Hi, Keely.
Hey. Oh, cute. More people I know. Love it.
Hi, Keely. Thanks, Amanda. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's amazing to hear about all the work that you've been doing over so many years. I apologize if I missed this, but you mentioned so amazing that the way that you negotiate for land for your own projects within the farms that you're already working at. I'm going to adapt that. Did you say what you're doing with those seeds in particular? And I was just curious about the structure, if there is one that your tribe is using for holding the seeds, distributing them, that sort of thing.
We do not have anything formal. You mean like, yeah, so what's happening with all the seeds that are grown out there? Is that, yeah? Okay. Just want to make sure I get at the heart of what you're asking. Yeah, there's not anything formal. We, hey, sorry, background noise. We seed saving. That's what's happening in the background. So yeah, we don't have anything formal, but okay, Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective, we do put out like a spreadsheet each year to everyone who's in our network. So we'll sort of inventory. Everyone like who has seed or who has been keeping and saving seed will inventory what they have and put it on a spreadsheet and then share that. And then we do like a mailing out to people who need or want certain seeds. So that's pretty informal, but well, it's semi-organized, I would say. And then within our tribe, I would say that anyone who wants or needs seed or asks for it, we just give it to them. But particularly, we prioritize folks who have shown up, or I guess in I'm like in social justice spaces, people would be like, what is that? The labor, what is the fuck? I just forgot the word. Sweat equity. There we go.
Sweat equity.
Sweat equity. I was like, what's the word? What's the word? Sweat equity. So like if people are putting in the work on that field, or people are putting in some sort of labor into the projects, they're sort of prioritized for both like food that we produce, as well as just like making sure they have access to seed and just like resources that we're sharing. But yeah, I think it's a lot of like Facebook and text messaging and classic, you know, grassroots organizing in terms of getting those seeds saved. We don't have like a long-term, we don't have like a seed storage space that's anything special. I have a decent seed library that is kept on a, you know, shelf in an area of my house that doesn't get any sun and is climate controlled. Sometimes we put things in closets. I don't know.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hate to cut this off, but we booked things really tight. So I want to make sure the next workshop can get started on time. This was really wonderful. Thank you so much. I just so appreciate the work you're doing and you're sharing it with us, and everybody for your great questions and comments. And I just want you all to know this will be, the recording will be in a folder that all the registrants will get a link to, so that if you missed anything, you can always find it again. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much, Keely.
Yeah. Take care, y'all.
Happy spring.
Bye.